If you are a BMS company and you have any sites running Microsoft Windows Server 2012, then you need to put in fee proposals right now to upgrade those servers in the next financial year. Putting fee proposals into the building owner in the same year that you need the money, it's way too late. The building owner needs a year or two to get their budgeting together and the money into their capital expenditure plan so that when you need the money, it's available to us. And I think that's why a lot of important upgrades for building management systems don't happen, because we tend to ask for the money when we need the money and it's just not available. It doesn't happen. No matter how important it is, the money's just not there. So we should generally, at an absolute minimum, be putting in fee proposals or working with the owner to develop the capital expenditure plans at least 1 year or 2 years ahead of when we need that money. In today's video, we're going to talk through some of the negatives or the risks when you do not upgrade your Microsoft Windows operating systems. If you're a building owner or a facility manager, this is very important to you to understand the risks and to put in place a plan to mitigate those risks. If you're a BMS company, write down some notes and some of the things we discussed today, put them into your fee proposal to help justify why this is so important. Putting in a fee proposal with a number in it and no explanation, just simply saying the operating system is obsolete, isn't really enough to convince the owner that this is an important thing that they should focus their spending on. Now, there are a whole bunch of things to consider if you have an obsolete Microsoft Windows operating system. In this video, I just want to focus on 2 points, which in my mind are complete massive deal breakers, either one of them. The first one is this, that if you have an obsolete Windows operating system, now, so Windows Server 2012, it's still supported till next year, so let's forget about that for a minute. The previous version that was supported was Windows Server 2008 and Windows 7. Those two operating systems became obsolete on the 14th of January 2020. So at the start of COVID, Microsoft stopped support for Windows Server 2008 and Windows 7. If you have either one of those, you're actually in big trouble already. The problem is this, that when you have such an old operating system, it usually means that the BMS application, graphics, alarms, and trends, is also not supported because it's very old. But the key point is that when BMS companies developed BMS applications, they were developed and tested to work on the current Windows operating system, Windows Server 2008, Windows 7. They obviously were not designed to be compatible with an operating system that was about to be developed in 10 years' time. So the point is that if you have an obsolete Windows operating system and that computer fails, which is highly likely because it's very old, if you plonk a brand new server next to it, a brand new server, you bought it today, the BMS service technician will be sitting there and saying, hang on a sec, thank you for the new server, but I can't install this BMS application that was developed and tested for Windows Server 2008 on this current server. It cannot be installed on there. So immediately, this failed computer and no visibility into the BMS, no alarms, no trends, no nothing, it cannot be resolved immediately because this brand new server, which is running Microsoft Windows Server 2022, it can be downgraded to 19, 16, 12, but you cannot downgrade a Windows operating system down to a version that's no longer supported. That makes obvious sense. So the only way to fix this broken computer is to upgrade the BMS application to the latest version that supports the operating system. Now, if you're very lucky, that's just, a fee proposal, a purchase order, wait, get the new application licensed and installed, and it takes you, let's say, a month to do that. That's if you're very lucky. But my experience is that when the BMS application is so old, the latest version at a minimum requires you to redraw all the graphics because the BMS application is different. And a lot of BMS companies, for example, Schneider Electric, have StructureWare, the new StructureWare BMS, and Siemens have the new Desigo CC. So some BMS companies, their current BMS product is completely different to the original one. It's a completely new product, which means that they have to rebuild the entire thing, sometimes from scratch. They're going to rebuild the whole database, redraw 200 graphic pages, rebuild all the alarms, their trends, all the logging in stuff. Everything has to be rebuilt. So what that means is, if your Windows Server 2008 or your Windows Server computer fails, you're looking at a 6-month timeline to be up and running again. Because it's not just how, like, they can probably rebuild a server in 3 months, but you've got to get fee proposals, and you've got to get purchase orders issue out. And if you have a consultant on board, they've got to write a concept design, a specification, run a tender phase, presentations, interviews, all the analysis to award the tender. Then you've got to agree terms and conditions with the BMS company. That can take a month. So if you have a very old operating system, don't think that buying a new computer is going to get you there. So right now, I am upgrading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm upgrading 7 BMS systems right now purely because of operating system issues. And that the biggest sites, 3 of them, the BMS server upgrade, no controllers, is 200,000 Australian dollars. It's a massive project. Some of these like 30 to 40 story commercial towers have, massive $40,000 rack mount servers with virtual environments and firewalls and antivirus and the VPN, the whole thing. It's very expensive. So don't think for a second that you can just do this on the fly. You've got to be planning for it years in advance. So if you have either 2008 or 7, you've got to get into this right now, because every day you're at high risk. The purpose of this video is that Windows Server 2012 is obsolete next year. So you have some time. BMS companies, get proposals in right now. So that was the first reason. The second reason is that, I know this doesn't sound important, it is very important. I've been doing a lot more work in the cybersecurity part of my design for BMS upgrades, and I've been reading lots of customers, building owners' cybersecurity policies to get better at this. And I can tell you right now that every single cybersecurity policy that you ever read says in there that you can't have obsolete Windows operating systems. It's against the policy. You can't have that, end of story. So even if you have a Windows Server 2008 server running there and it's running along, it's okay, and you think, well, it's okay, doesn't mean you're okay, because you're in breach of the policy. That's a big deal. So it's becoming more and more common for there to be cybersecurity audits done on building management systems as a prerequisite to other types of technology projects and blah, blah, blah. So at some point, somebody is going to come and review this building, and you're going to fail for all these different reasons. One of them is going to be that you've got an obsolete operating system there. It's not permitted, end of story. That's embarrassing for the facility manager that's not running the building properly maybe, and it's embarrassing for BMS companies that have allowed this to happen. Why does it happen? Because we didn't ask for the money a year or two before. We waited until it was the year and said, oh, the operating system's obsolete, we need $50,000. The money's not available, your fee proposal gets put into the bottom drawer and forgotten about. And then when it is obsolete, no one remembered about it because it just got forgotten about. I'm just running through the edit, and I'm not sure that I've made it really clear in this video and the previous video as to why this cybersecurity policy is so important. I think a lot of you are watching this and thinking, well, yeah, it's not that important. So let me tell you exactly the story that happened to me. What happened to me 2 years ago on a live project, and I think that will make it more clear as to why it's important. A real life example. So about 2 years ago, I got engaged to provide BMS consulting services on a large BMS upgrade, $1 million project in Sydney. So I fly up from Melbourne to Sydney, I stay for 3 days, I go through all the plant rooms, take hundreds of photographs, I sit down in front of the BMS computer, go through everything, I read through and scan through all the existing documentation, the operation and maintenance manuals. Actually ended up posting a box of manuals back to Melbourne for later on. Lots of workshops with the customer, the different stakeholders to understand what they want, what they don't want. And a bit of background, this first phase for me is called the return brief or the upgrade strategy or the concept design. It's basically just writing up a report that explains exactly what you have, what the risks are, what needs to be done, what the sequence is, and then finalizing or confirming all the discussions around what do they want to do with the network, energy management systems, building analytics, all sorts of stuff. Provide some options, a recommendation, and budget costs. And the purpose of that report, it locks in the design so that I don't do a specification, a tender phase, 12 months of construction, and then find out at the end there's a disconnect and the customer, they wanted us to, redo the whole network, whatever it was. So I'm in this phase. And one of the things I noticed was that the BMS was disconnected straight into a domestic style ADSL router, phone line, to the internet. No security, no firewall, no VPN, nothing. So I sort of jotted that down to sort of resolve that in my return brief thing. When I got back to Melbourne, I arranged a meeting with the customer's IT department, and my intention is to present to them 3 options for how to improve the internet security. So I go into this meeting, there's about 5 of them in this virtual meeting, and option 1 that I present is I can specify that the BMS company provides an industrial programmable firewall with VPN antivirus. Option 2 is the customer provides the firewall, VPN antivirus, which is actually my preferred solution because I think that a customer's IT department is better suited to doing firmware upgrades and patching of the firewall and adding or removing users, changing firewall rules. I think they're better placed than a BMS company or a service technician. The third option I was presenting is I can run a new cable from the BMS into your comms room. I'll plug it into your network switch, use up a VLAN, and then you just deal with the internet security however you want to do it on your end. So those are the 3 options I'm going for. And while I'm working through this, the customer's cybersecurity expert starts asking me a whole lot of questions about, not just the internet security, but what's actually behind the firewall in the BMS. They're asking me about what type of network switches we have. Are they programmable network switches? Can they see the network design? What type of BMS IP devices do we have? They're asking me all these questions, which to me is irrelevant because this is an internet security discussion. And I'm like, hang on guys, hang on. The BMS network is completely isolated from your corporate network. It's completely separate. We don't need to talk about this. It's completely separate. Don't worry about it. And that's when it happened, when the cybersecurity person leans forward in the virtual meeting. Well, they didn't do that. I'm just saying that for effect. But the cybersecurity specialist says to me, and he says, Bryce, the cybersecurity policy applies to all networks in the building. It makes no difference if it's not connected to the corporate network. All networks, big networks, small networks, standalone networks, networks with no internet, all of them, all networks within this building need to comply with the cybersecurity policy. And that is when the penny dropped for me. And I knew that it's no longer about what are the chances of the BMS getting hacked. It's not about that. It's about there's a policy, there's a security policy for the building or for the customer. So for those of you that think, this is not very important to me, we don't do premium grade buildings, we don't do massive buildings, we don't do hospitals and data centers, it's not important to me. It will become important to you because technology is coming. We can't stop it. And when technology comes, things like this start to happen. We have to start being more cybersecurity aware. So it will 100% happen that you will win a job at some point, and a new job, and the customer will say, show me your cybersecurity policy, and you won't have that, and that will be very embarrassing. Or you'll be just doing maintenance in a building where you've been for 10 years, and they'll be doing some technology projects, machine learning stuff, analytics stuff, cloud stuff, and they will ask you that because it's coming through your network. They will ask you for that. It's very important. Right now, start getting into this and start chipping away at it. Watch the previous video if you didn't see that one. Right, let me get back to the video and I will see you soon. All right, let's start wrapping this up. 1, obsolete BMS operating systems, old computers, cannot always be quickly upgraded. It's a long process to do it. 2, not being compliant to the customer's cybersecurity policy is very embarrassing and can take away a lot of the good work that you've done. You can be an awesome BMS company doing lots of good work. This little thing gets highlighted up the food chain. It's embarrassing. It makes it look like you're incompetent when maybe you're doing an excellent job. So the call to action is, if you're a BMS company, go out and get the service technicians to report back what is the Microsoft operating system for all of the sites, for the server and workstations, touchscreens, anything. I often go to sites and I find that the server operating system is supported. They've been upgrading it. They know it's important, but the workstations, they're not important, so they don't get upgraded. I often find supported servers and then Windows 7 and Windows XP workstations dotted around. There's one in the chiller plant room there, it's Windows XP. There's one in the ground floor security office, Windows 7. Workstations also need to be running supported operating systems, not for so much the risk of the BMS falling over, but more of the risk of the cybersecurity compliance piece. So go and do that. Get a spreadsheet, every single site that you've got in the whole country. Server operating system version, workstation operating system version. If you have a touch screen or a display board in the ground floor lobby where the tenants come in, they see, oh, beautiful energy efficiency stuff. What is this operating system? If you have a touch screen in the plant room on the chiller management system panel, there's sometimes a touch screen there. What is the operating system? Not just the server, all Windows devices. Get the list together. If you find anything that's Windows Server 2008, Windows 7, Windows XP, I'm doing that had Windows Server 2003, I couldn't believe it. Any one of those already obsolete ones, fee proposals immediately, it's super urgent. If you have Windows Server 2012, proposals in now for the next financial year. Get ready, the money's available when you need it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.